13th of May, Rabbi Furst, Parsha Hashavua, Behar.
The call is being transferred to voicemail.
Good morning. Good morning, Lou. Good morning, Yechiel. How's everyone doing today? Okay.
Good. You didn't get my message. All's well that ends well. I told you I was going to be late.
Yeah, I did get the email, right? And everything's okay, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I didn't see a message from you, so I figured you didn't get it. So I just went ahead and started up the session.
Oh, perfect. Okay, great.
So we're okay.
Yeah. Fine. Very good. Okay. Good morning. Good morning, Barry. Okay, so this is Rabbi Shlomo Furst here, Yeshivat Sami Nafshi here in Shloim Kereb Zoom. This is Erev Shabbos Parshas Behar. For those of us who are in Eretz Israel, as you know, those of you who may be listening or words, a different Parsha, Parshas Emor, 1 week behind. And but we'll be learning according to our Seder here in Yerushalayim, Eretz Israel, Parshas Behar. And we have. I wanted to ask you: Did we discuss the Rashi in Parshas Lech Lecha yesterday in the shir? Good morning, Roy. How are you today?
Good morning, Rabbi Furst.
Right.
I don't remember discussing Lech Lecha.
Didn't discuss the Rashi in Lech Lecha? Okay. So very good. So first of all, let's discuss. We'll start with the few psukim in our Parsha, Parshas Behar. That'll be, I'll tell you where you can find it. It's in Perek Chaf Hey, Pasuk Lamed 28. Did we? Are you sure we didn't do this yesterday? I'm just wondering if we did this in reference to the Megillus Rus shift. But if not, if we did, we'll move on to something else. If we didn't do this, we'll pick this up now. So that's in Perek Lamed Chaf Hey, Pasuk Lamed Ches, 38.
So,
Pasuk 38 in Chaf Hey.
Right.
so
I don't remember this pasuk from yesterday.
Okay. Very good. Perfect. Very good. Okay. So yeah, anyone's interested in
You said Lamed Ches?
Yes.
Okay.
Lamed Ches is
8.
38.
38. Right.
Can I start?
Yeah, sure, if you like.
Kuf. I haven't got it.
Ready? Okay. Ani Hashem Elokechem asher hotzetzi eschem me'eretz Mitzrayim L'tet lechem et the Eretz Canaan lehois lechem lelohim. I am Hashem, your God, who took you out of Egypt to give you the land of Canaan and to be a God to you.
Right. Okay, let's take a look at the Rashis here.
Asher hotzetzi, etc. Chanti, and I distinguished Bein Bechor, Lishenu Bechor. I distinguished between the firstborn and one who was not a firstborn. Afani Yodea. I also know Vinifera and punish. Min malva meos Yisrael berich ribes
Ribis, right? This,
Omer shel nachrihem. I distinguish between one who lends money to a Jew with interest and says it belongs to a non-Jew.
yeah,
Oh.
so yeah. See, because this is a pasuk which is attached to the previous psukim. And if you want, take a look, go back two psukim, Lamed Vav and Lamed Zayin. Let's do those two psukim, just so you know the context of what Rashi is talking about here.
Toshev El Tikach Miota Neshech V'Tirbi V'Yareta Melohecha. Don't take interest from him, and you should fear God. V'chai achicha imach, and let your brother live imach with you.
Right.
Es kaspecha lo titain lo beneshech uvamarbis v'lo titain achlecha. Do not give him your money for interest, and do not give your food for increase. So it's warning both the lender and the borrower.
Right. And that's
Right?
the
Both get warned.
right, the warning about taking and giving ribbis. And
Yeah.
the significant thing about ribbis is that just that we're speaking to clarify the psukim, that ribbis it's not there's no stealing involved with ribbis, right? Ribbis is a perfectly straight
An agreement?
and understandable agreement between two people who want to do business. This guy has a need for money, and this guy has extra money lying around, and so the one who needs the money, can put the money to good use, and the one who has the extra money can make a little ribbis on the side, right? So it's a chiddush. It's a big chiddush that the Torah answers this. One explanation that I've heard from Rav Scheinberg, Zechon Bracha, is that really, if a person needs money, it's part of a chesed to lend him the money he needs, right? So the Kadosh Baruch Hu wants you to do your chesed, right? To do it 100%, right? Not to have any other ulterior motives involved in doing the chesed that you're supposed to do. So if you were going to lend him the money and get ribbis, you would have other alternative motives in lending him the money, not simply doing it for the sake of the chesed. So therefore, Kadosh Baruch Hu forbids Jews to lend with ribbis, and it's a serious offense, lav in the Torah, and so much so that Chazal say that a person lends with ribbis, he won't be zoichet to tchias emesim, which is a pretty serious punishment. And we see another lesson in lending ribbis is that just like it's a prohibition to lend a fellow Jew with interest, it's a mitzvah to lend a non-Jew with ribbis, right? Just like they can charge you ribbis, a non-Jew can charge you ribbis if they lend you money. It's also permissible for you to charge ribbis if you lend money to a non-Jew, and it's also a mitzvah to charge them the ribbis. And we see that like the whole basis of finance is based on ribbis and surcharges, right? They wouldn't be able to have economies flourish the way they do if people would not be able to lend their money and get some type of a surcharge back and an interest charge back on the monies that they're lending. But for us, that's completely forbidden, right? It's poison for us. For the Jews, that's poison. For the non-Jews, it's a very good thing, and it's something which they should do. And they can even lend us with ribbis, and we can even pay them ribbis to them. but you can't pay ribbis to another Jew. So that just is the point about ribbish that Rashi is mentioning in this particular Rashi that we just read. So that's why it says here. That's why Rashi is saying, what's that have to do with Ani Hashem Elokecha Elokechem Hotzei Eskem Mitzrayim? What does Yetzias Mitzrayim have to do with ribbis? So Rashi is giving you the answer to that. That don't think that if you're going to try and trick a fellow Jew and say, well, listen, I'm just a middleman between the goy and you, and you know that the goy, the non-Jew, can charge you ribbis. I'm just a middleman. I'm just his bank manager, and he's really lying, and he's really saying that what you think is permissible, because it's now going to be attributed to the loan from a non-Jew to a Jew, is really going to be forbidden because it's really a Jew's money, and the one who's portraying himself as being a simple middleman between the non-Jew and the Jew is really the principal lender, and he is simply fooling. So Shem in the pasuk is saying, don't think you can fool a Kadosh Baruch Hu, just like the Kadosh Baruch Hu, as Rashi said, was able to determine the difference between a Behar of a Jew and the Behar of a Mitzri. So Kadosh Baruch Hu can also very easily know the truth about what's going on with these monies, and don't think your person will escape punishment because he's because he's able to fool his fellow Jew, doesn't mean he's able to fool Kadosh Baruch Hu. So that's that part of Rashi. Therefore, we have to be careful about lending with ribbis, even if you would be tempted to do it in a deceitful way. Don't think you can fool Hashem. Okay, let's go on to the next part of the Rashi. Right? L'seis lechem ez Eretz Canaan. I'm giving you.
Devar achar.
Yeah, go ahead, Barry.
Devar achar.
Davar
Asher hotzei eshem excuse me. Asher hotzei eshem eretz Mitzrayim al menas shetekablo aleichem mitzvosai v'afilu hein kevados aleichem. The alternate explanation is Hashem, who took you out of the land of Egypt, Almanas, on the condition that you don't accept on yourselves, on the condition that you would accept on yourselves,
right,
my commandments, even if they're difficult.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And why is this said over here? Because ribbis could be a very difficult mitzvah. Right? You see that a fellow Jew comes to you, he needs money, he needs a loan, and he's willing to pay you ribbis. He even offers you. So he needs $100,000, and he's willing to give you 125 in 6 months, right? So you say to yourself, wow, I can make $25,000 in 6 months. That's very, very good. That's completely forbidden. So it might be difficult for you to keep this mitzvah, but nevertheless, Hashem took you out of Mitzrayim, that you accept upon yourselves keeping the mitzvahs, even if they happen to be difficult. Okay, next part of Rashi.
Notet lechem es Eretz Canaan, to give you the land of Canaan, Bishar, shetekablu mitzvotai. I'm giving the land of Canaan, Bishar, as a reward for accepting my mitzvot. L'hois lochem l'Elohim, to be a God to you. Shekol hadar be'eretz Yisrael. Whoever lives in the land of Israel, ani lo l'Elohim. I am to him God. V'chol hotzesi mimena. And whoever leaves it, the Ovar avodah zarah, and whoever leaves the land is like worshiping idols.
That's something we have to try and understand a bit.
Pretty serious.
Yeah, and that also relates to our learning in Megillus Rus, right? Elimelech, he left, picked up, he took the Naomi, took his 2 sons, left there. It's Israel, right? So we can from this Rashi we can also get a little bit more deeper understanding of what Elimelech was doing, and we'll get back to that in a little while. But first, we have to understand what does it actually mean that it's ka'ovid avodah zarah. Now, a person who leaves Eretz Yisrael, what does it mean that it's like he's over avodah zarah? Seems to be a very, very serious type of a statement over here.
Yeah. When we think of avodah zarah, we think of bowing down to an idol.
Right. Right.
Well, I don't know. But when a person would leave Eretz Israel, does that mean he's giving up on Hashem, so to speak? He's losing his faith in Hashem. Is that the problem?
That's part of it. That's part of it. So does that make it like he's being over avodah zarah?
I mean, what is a person saying when he leaves? I mean, if there's a famine, when there was a famine, Elimelech was leaving to get food. That's reasonable.
Right. So that's another point that we'll be getting back to that eventually when we're getting involved with the Megillus Esther, Megillus Ruth again a bit. That because like there was a famine, there are certain times when you can leave Eretz.
When we can what?
There are certain times when you can leave. There are certain times where you can leave Eretz Israel.
Mhm.
And a famine, depending on the strength and the extent of the famine, that is, we see Avraham Avinu left Eretz Canaan, right? He was told to Lech Lecha, right?
Yaakov Avinu, he went to Mitzrayim.
Yeah.
He left.
Yeah. Well, there, HaKadosh Baruch Hu came to him in a dream and told him he should go down to Mitzrayim, right?
Right. No, I'm not saying he left without reshus. It's just that there are situations where you're supposed to leave.
Yep. That's right. That's right. To help you understand what this Rashi is a little bit about, the Sefer Chavis Halavavos in I'm not sure if it's in Shar B'Tachan. I'd have to double check. There was he brings a mice. There was a chassid echad. Now, chassid, he was obviously a very pious Jewish individual, and he went to do business in Chutz La'aretz, right? Went to do some business in Chutz La'aretz to make a little money in I don't know, Morocco, Persia, France. I don't know. He went somewhere to make some money. So when he was there in Chutz La'aretz, he ran into a priest. Ran into a priest of some religion or something like that. So this priest was interested. he spied that he had a Jew in his vicinity. So he was interested in talking to this Jew. So he starts talking with this Jew. So he asked this Jew, tell me, where are you from? He says, oh, I'm from Eretz Israel. And he says, oh, so you're Jewish? He says, yes, I'm Jewish. He says, why did you leave Eretz Israel? What was the reason that you picked up and left your homeland? So he said, I came here to do business. I came here to do business, to make money, right? Get a little parnasa. So the priest asked, he said to him, I don't understand. You claim that your God is the Almighty, right? He's all powerful and he's almighty. So, and you also claim that Eretz Israel is your land, your homeland. So your God who's almighty can't give you your parnasa in your own homeland? What are you doing here in Chutz La'aretz amongst us for? So when he heard that, he picked up and went back to Eretz Israel. Yep, picked up and went back to Eretz Israel. So that's a little bit about what Rashi's talking about here. How can you relate that to this Rashi in some way? See,
Well, I guess if a person leaves Eretz Israel to go to another country, in a way he's saying that the mazel of that country is better than the mazel that Hashem is giving us.
right.
You could definitely make more money in America than you can in Israel.
But do you need to?
Is that statement a problem?
Yeah, do you need to?
No, that's not what I'm getting at, Roy.
Yeah, I know.
What I'm getting at is to say that the mazel of a land is better than Israel. I don't think that that's a problem. I think that's, in certain cases, it's true. Like Roy says, there's other reasons why you wouldn't go. But it's not because you're saying, I believe in Hashem, and therefore the mazel of Israel is better than every other land for Parnasa.
So, well, let's say there are a lot of just take doesn't have to be exact. It doesn't only have to be where you live. It could be what you do. There are a lot of professions that are higher paying professions than being rabbis, right? Right. Rabbis are not the most highly paid individuals. So if a person wants to stop being a rabbi and wants to become a brain surgeon, right? So is that like being an oived of Ozara? We say that that's like worshiping idols.
Well, like Roy says, what's his underlying motivation? Does he need to have a brain surgeon's salary? If it's a real need, I would say no. But if it's not a real need, then maybe it is.
Yeah.
How do we
Right.
know? How do we know that Hashem doesn't want us to go out and make some money there and bring it back to Eretz Israel or like that? You know, sort of after all, they probably owe us.
Well, let's review the statement that Rashi makes here, which is really similar. It's a Gemara. We'll look, maybe there's another Rashi that we're going to look at in Parsha's Lech Lecha. We'll get to that in a few moments, Bezrat Hashem. But let's look at the Rashi again. Lios lechem lelokim, right? So Rashi says shekol hadar be'eretz Yisrael ani lo lelokim. For all those who dwell in Eretz Yisrael, I am to them Elokim. We call a yotzim memenu and all that leave it, right, are as if they're worshiping idols, right? In both statements, both the first part of the statement, the second one, there were no exceptions. Anybody who lives in Eretz Israel, right? I'm going to be for them, Elohim, and anyone who's in leaving it, it's like these over Avodah Zarah. Irregardless of the necessity of leaving or not.
So earlier you said that there are circumstances under which
Isn't it,
it's correct to leave Eretz Yisrael. So
Right.
now are you saying that even if it's correct to leave Eretz Yisrael, nevertheless you are also over Avodah Zarah?
Well, in order to focus your look at the Rashi says not everybody is the first part is based on the fact anyone who's here in Eretz Israel and anyone who leaves it, right? So the circumstances by which a person can leave, right? Those are going to be again, if it was really Avodah Zarah, we don't have any permissibilities of doing Avodah Zarah, right? That Avodah Zarah is one of the three cardinal sins a person is supposed to give his life for. There's no, you can't be allow a person to be oived Avodah Zarah for any reason whatsoever, right? So
how can you then say that there are circumstances when you're allowed to leave?
if time permits, we'll maybe go into that aspect of leaving Eretz Israel. But let's take care of the first part of the statement first. To call Hadar Eretz Israel, I need lo Elokim. And what does that mean? That if he's not living in Eretz Israel, we're talking about a person he was born in Chutz La'aretz, right? The second part of our Rashi says about a person who's leaving Eretz Israel. He's in Eretz Israel and he's leaving Eretz Israel, right? But what about a person who was born in Chutz La'aretz? Does this statement of Rashi speak to that person in any way?
Once he makes Aliyah, then he's in the same position as someone born in Israel.
He never made Aliyah. Rashi wanted to come to Eretz Israel. He never made it. The Vilna Gaon never came to Eretz Israel. Baal Shem Tov never came to Eretz Israel. Right? They all were born and died in Chutz La'aretz.
So are you asking, the question that you're asking is that if you are born in Chutz La'aretz, is it like serving idols, or has I've got the question wrong, completely wrong?
Does this statement of Rashi apply to them?
I would say no.
Right. And why?
Because they don't live in Israel, so you can't say that condition applies. And they're not leaving Israel, so you can't say that condition applies.
Right.
It doesn't say, if he lives in Israel, I'm his God, and if he doesn't live in Israel, I'm not his God.
Right. Okay. So now let's take a look. There's a Rashi in Parshas Lech Lecha. Let's go to Parshas Lech. That's in Bereshis. Let's see. Tell you where it is. 1 second.
Is it Yud Ches?
Uh,
Tesvav?
Yud Ches, 1 second. I think no.
When
Well,
Hashem says, I've given the land?
I'm not sure that's what
Yom Ahu Koresh Hashem et Avraham Beris Lemor Lizarecha Netati et Haaretz Hazot Min Har Mitzrayim Ad Hanaar Hagadol Nahar Paras.
1 second. No, it's a
So
different.
that's
A little
so
bit. It's not. That's not exactly the Rashi I want.
uh-huh.
1 second. Mm, 1 second. Ah, 1 second. Lech Lecha. That's by Shivi. Shishi. Shishi. 1 second. Mm, mm, 1 second. We'll find it. Find it in a minute. Yeah. Yeah, Pasuk. Yeah, actually, Pasuk. It's in Parak Yud Zion.
Yud Zayin. Okay.
And Pasuk Chet. Pasuk Chet. Hey,
V'natati lecha l'zarecha.
yeah.
Natati lecha l'zarecha acharecha at the eretz megurecha at kol eretz Canaan la'chuzos olam yoti lahen lelekim. I'll give you and your offspring the land that you're traveling on now, the whole land of Canaan, for a permanent possession, and I shall be a God to them.
Oh, very good. Okay, now take a look at Rashi here. Who's this Olam?
Achudus Olam. V'sham yeh lahem le'Elohim, and there in the land of Canaan, I shall be a God to them. Avol hadar bechutza le'eretz, but one who dwells outside the land of Israel, dome kemei she'ein lo Elokai, is like one who has no God. Woo.
Yeah, how do we?
Oh, so yeah, well that goes along because the if you live in Eretz Israel, it's not only just Parnasa or how comfortable you're living. There's a special schus for living in Eretz Israel that you can't get anywhere else. So that's the benefit of living in Eretz Israel. It's not just a question of Parnasa, that in other words, Parnasa is not a valid excuse to leave Eretz Israel. The conclusion we come to?
Not necessarily so. That again, you mentioned an important point. It's not necessarily simply the point of Parnasa or not. That's not
Right.
not necessarily the point here.
And besides, the history of the Jews, being persecuted by the world, so we got dispersed because of it. So how can you fault someone living in Russia for living there? That it's the whole weight of history forced him there. He didn't make that decision to live in Russia. His Bubby and Zadie were born there already.
Right.
So the fact that he's there, I'm asking, how can you fault him?
Well, the question first of all, do we really look at this as a fault? Is this really like a criticism?
No, well that's what I'm asking, because it seems that if you're this Rashi is saying that if you're not living in Eretz Israel, you're not fulfilling your life.
Yeah. Now,
Because that's what he says. Avol hador bechutza la'aretz. If you're living outside of Eretz Israel, kimei she'ein lo Elokei. It's like one who has no God. That's
right. So now, is that you understand that to be like a criticism or?
yeah. I mean, that's what it seems to be saying.
Mhm.
It's like one who has no God. So if a person who's living outside of Eretz Israel, it's like Hashem writes him off. And I mean, it can't be. I mean, obviously, it can't be so, because there's very Hashavua people like Rebbe said, who never came to Eretz Israel, who were buried in Poland and France and Spain and United States, so they're not, I don't think they lost their chelik and shemayim.
Right. So, all right. Let's now just take a look and remind ourselves of something that Naomi said at the end, toward the end of the first parak in Megillas Furst, if you remember, right? If you look at there's two psukim, actually one particular pasuk. It's the most important pasuk for us right now. After Naomi comes back, right? So
In the first parak?
first parak, right? Says there in pasuk Kaf Aleph. Actually, you start with Kaf. Take a look at Kaf and Kaf Aleph.
Vatomer alehen al tikrona li naami karenli mara ki hemar shaddai li maod. Don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, because Hashem has dealt bitterly with me.
Okay.
Ani Malaya halachti v'reikam hashiveni Hashem lama tikra ena li naami Hashem anabi v'shadai hareya li. I went away full, and the Lord brought me back empty.
Oh,
So why should you call me Naomi? Because Hashem has testified against me, and Hashem has dealt bitterly with me. Okay.
so here you notice that Naomi, when referring to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, she uses the expression Yud Kei Vav Kei, the four-letter reference to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. In the two psukim that Rashi's been explaining to us, it was the lashon of Elokim. Right, Roy, right, Barry? Okay.
And also what about the word Shaddai? Ki hemar ma'od.
Right,
That's also different.
right. Two different references to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And as we know, the references that we use for Kadosh Baruch Hu, sometimes it's Yud Kei Vav Kei, sometimes it's Elokim. They have different connotations, different aspects of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. So the shame of the Yud Kei Vav Kei is usually referred to as Midas HaChesed, Kadosh Baruch Hu's Midah of Chesed, right?
Yeah.
And
But here it's
Elokim,
not that way.
Elokim is more Midas Hadin, right? Strict justice. Also, the shame of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, Elokim, its gematria is the same as Teva. Teva meaning the natural way of the working of the world, right? which is really also midas hadin, because the teva works according to the rules, right? Chesed is above the rules. Din is following the rules. Justice is following the rules. That's Elohim. Chesed is going beyond the rules. So you can understand, this is part of what I heard from Rabbi Tuski about these Rashis, that a person who is living in Kol Adar, right, the Eretz Yisrael ni lo lelokim, meaning anyone who lives in Eretz Yisrael is going to be to Kadosh Baruch Hu, is going to be to him Elokim, meaning that represents the Hashgacha Pratis that a Kadosh Baruch Hu exercises on that person, right? With strict justice, the strict justice allows for Hashgacha Pratis to be in effect, right? That we can have Hashgacha Pratis with Chesed also. But when a person's in Eretz Yisrael, there's much more Hashgacha Pratis, there's much more direct dealing than if he's living in Chutz La'aretz, right? That in Chutz La'aretz, things are more, so to speak, on automatic. They're through intermediaries. When a person's living in Eretz Yisrael, it's much more direct. Because Baruch Hu's control over his life. So that's the same idea. When a person avodah zarah, this the Rambam explains in Hilchos Avodas Kochavim, the Hilchos Avodah Zarah, that originally those people who worshipped idols, worshipped the stars, they believed strongly in the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So he goes into the whole aspect about how Avodah Zarah developed as a philosophy, as a way of life, whatever you want to call it. He explains that originally the original idol worshippers believed very strongly in the Kadosh Baruch Hu, except they made a fatal mistake that they understood that the Kadosh Baruch Hu was so exalted that, so to speak, he didn't want to have any direct dealings with this lower world of Olam Hazeh, the physical world. So therefore, there were intermediaries which Kadosh Baruch Hu left to have the world run through these intermediaries, right? And therefore, they started worshiping the intermediaries as having Has V'Sholem powers in and of themselves, because they didn't understand properly that the Kadosh Baruch Hu, in spite of his great exaltedness and nobility as being the Borei Olam, he still had a direct interest and interaction in this physical world, into the most smallest details. Right? That's our belief, that a Kadosh Baruch Hu deals with this world on a very direct level, to the very basic details of all ways of life. Now, when they made that mistake, so they started believing in the intermediaries rather than the Kadosh Baruch Hu himself. So that's what we can understand by Rashi's telling us. A person who's living in Chutz La'aretz, it's like he's Ovdei Avodah Zarah, because he's the Kadosh Baruch Hu gave us Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is the place where we're supposed to live and we're supposed to do his mitzvahs. Chutz La'aretz is not the place where we're supposed to live and do his mitzvahs. The place we're supposed to be is in Eretz Yisrael, right? And if there's a reason why they are in Chutz La'aretz, right, it must be because there's some intermediary reason why they're not.
What's going on?
What's going on where?
It's all these noises.
I don't know. Anyway, it's loud. It's and anyway, so make the point. So living in Chutz La'aretz is a sometimes it's de facto. A person, like the Rashi says, if he picks up and leaves Eretz Yisrael, there's some type of a reason, motivation why he's leaving Eretz Yisrael and forsaking Eretz Yisrael, the place where Kadosh Baruch Hu designed for us to keep his Torah and to fulfill his mitzvahs. So therefore, there's some intermediary which is being intervening
If
between Kadosh Baruch Hu.
can Roy put the Chana Boritz on mute?
Let's see, I don't think so. That Luke can do that, but we
Yeah,
we're
Luke,
gonna-
yeah.
we're gonna finish that up. We're gonna finish now anyway. So that's the point I want to make about anyone who leaves Eretz Yisrael. He's like a Avodah because he's looking for some type of intermediary, right, to help him with his whatever he might be needing for his life or lifestyle, and that's the same type of mistake that the original Avodah Zorahs, the idol worshippers, made, that they were looking for intermediaries to work with their relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Kadosh wants a direct relationship, and that direct relationship exists when a person's in Eretz Yisrael, and it doesn't exist to the same extent, right, when a person's in Chutz La'aretz. So
Okay.
that's the way we can understand these the Rashis here. Okay. In any event, Baruch Hashem, we're in Eretz Yisrael, and
Yes.
continue to stay here in Mitzvah Hashem. And hope to see you all next week. And in the meantime, you should have a very wonderful, productive Erev Shabbos. And again, hope to see you next week.
All right.
All right. Thank you very much, Rabbi Furst. Thank you.
Mitzvah Hashem. Thank you. Should all be well.
All right. Bye.
Thank you, Roy. Be well.
You want to go to Rabbi Rabbi David Shur? Huh? He's a bit more lively. He'll keep you going, okay? What? About it's hot crossing and stuff to put it to you. Do you want to eat something? Or you ate quite a lot. Want a cup of coffee? You can't sleep. You have to learn and sleep this afternoon.